It's hard because I will be on, early on, I've always been very lean with business. And early on, I was hesitant to like bring someone else on, not because I didn't want, someone to be part of the business or anything like that, but it was the financial aspect. I was like, can I, should I spend on this? Can I afford it? That kind of stuff. Done is better than perfect. Because I think, and especially coming from the client, corporate client side, consumers assume it is part of us, right? For instance, our shipping carriers, we are an e-commerce site, so we have to ship.
Welcome back to Founders Forum. Today we have a very special guest. We have the co-founder and CEO of Belle Bump and Mina and Vine, Anita Rajendra. Anita, thank you so much for joining us. We're super excited to hear more about your business. So I guess without further ado, we'd love to hear more about like how you started your business, what your entrepreneurial journey was like. So if you don't mind, like, let's go back to the beginning. Where did this come from?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you guys. So my background is in the corporate world. I was in the corporate world for a long time, but I always had this passion and interest for entrepreneurship. And if someone asked me what I would like to do, I always said, have my own business someday. I didn't know what, but there was just like this interest and passion towards that. And I got to the point in my career where I was kind of ready for a change after like 13 years or so. Wanted to do something else, but I wasn't really excited about other opportunities I was seeing. And so I was like, I always talk about starting something. And so I was like, okay, I either have to stop talking about it or maybe take action and do something. And so that was kind of the catalyst. I think once I made that decision, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to do it. I didn't have an idea at the time. I was just like, I'm going to venture into this new world. So I was working at Coca-Cola company.
Oh, Coca-Cola.
Wow. Very cool.
I heard of them.
Yeah. Little company. So I gave myself like 6 months, 7 months to kind of figure things out, and so I started ideating during that time period and, was kind of methodical about it, to be honest. I was coming up with ideas and then kind of like researching and testing and seeing what might, appeal to people and what might be a good business. So I was giving myself a runway, before I kind of just jumped off. And interestingly enough, by that time I'd had 3 kids myself.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was, working full time. And so I kind of understood like being pregnant and buying maternity clothes and not, liking that process. This specific idea of renting maternity and nursing clothes came to me when I was in a meeting at Coca-Cola, and a colleague was pregnant and she was complaining about buying maternity clothes. And I think it just kind of clicked because I was in that brainstorm mode of like ideating ideas. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I just kind of like noodled with it and then came up with this idea of renting maternity and nursing clothes. And as I did the research and talked to people, everybody was like, that's, makes so much sense. And
it really does. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of how the idea came and how I started. And
wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
You mentioned that you kind of jumped ship from a 9-to-5 world, which I think is scary. I used to have a career of my own. And I think there's like generally 2 schools of thoughts of like, you should stay with your 9-to-5 until you figure out the business and like see that it works before you go. And there are other folks who just like cold turkey, just like leave and, dive right in. And you said you had like 3 kids. So like, how did you balance the 9-to-5 work? And how did that feel when you were like making that transition from, okay, 9-to-5 work and starting your own business and completely leaving?
Right. It was hard. I mean, thankfully I have, my husband is supportive. So that was great. But I knew, to your point, I knew it would be hard to do the full-time job, 9-to-5 job, plus like really focus on the business as, we were raising 3 kids. So I was like, something's got to give. Obviously I couldn't give up my kids. So that's where I was like, the 9-to-5 will go. And so during the time I was working, I was more kind of like just playing with idea and researching, as I was saying. So it wasn't like a lot of time. And also just kind of understanding the resources here in Atlanta. and, you know, meeting other entrepreneurs and just trying to get into that mindset, because it's very different from corporate world. So that's kind of what I was doing simultaneously, and that worked for me. And then when I officially jumped and kind of switched, you know, I'll admit I did take some time, you know, like I kind of took my time to like really like launch. My kids were still young, so I was like, you know, this is an opportunity to spend a little time with them also. And so yeah, so I just, you know, I took my time. I mean, sometimes in hindsight, I'm like, I should have gone faster, but then of course, you know, I had great personal time as well, you know, with my kids. So it was a balance for me.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I love to hear too that like, I think there's a lot of information out there where it's like, oh, you have to grind and grind. And if you don't grind, you're never going to be successful. And I agree that there's like a level of hard work that needs to be put into it, but like also finding balance, right? And like, you still have to live your life and tend to the people who make life great. So I love that you have that sentiment. I think that's something that needs to be out there more. Going into like the business a little bit more. So this is obviously something that I've never heard of actually before you brought it up, was like the idea of like renting. I don't know another business like off the top of my head that does this. So kind of what was your journey to like starting that business? Did you go direct to consumer first? Did you start like with like friends and family? Like how did it kind of get off the ground into what it is now?
Yeah, so I did go direct to consumer because to be honest, like at that stage, like I said, I'd already had 3 kids. So like my, you know, peer base was kind of in a similar phase of life, and I had already had their kids. So it's kind of like, you know, it's funny. I launched the website and I expected, like, you know, as a lot of people, all these orders to come in. Didn't necessarily happen. And I was like, you know, even though I told all of my friends and my network, I was like, you know, when I stepped back, I was like, okay, it makes sense. They're not in this stage, you know? But once I kind of thought of the idea, I just did a lot of research, trying to get connections. I did get into a women's entrepreneurship program here in Atlanta, which was really helpful. And so I did that before I launched. So that was kind of very instrumental in kind of like just one, giving me the confidence that, you know, I could do it. And then 2, giving me some like resources and in terms of network, and then also like ideas and things like that to utilize.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Something that I enjoy, which maybe I should not enjoy as part of the entrepreneurial journey, is failure, right? So when we started like 2 years ago, we tried a lot of different things and we would fail in a lot of them. And usually 1 or 2 things succeed, or even just in the main kind of business that we have, there's failures along the way, right? Can you share with us kind of some of your favorite failures along the way in building your company, whether it's this company specifically or the stuff beforehand?
Yeah, with Belle Bump, it's interesting because they're, you know, we're part of a system, and there are things that are out of our hands a lot of times, but consumers assume it is part of us, right? For instance, our shipping carriers, we are an e-commerce site, so we have to ship right, everything. And so, but consumers don't understand necessarily that, you know, there some delays or shipping issues is out of our hands. And so they come to us. And so that was kind of a big struggle or challenge. I don't know if it was necessarily a failure, I guess, but, you know, I kind of equate it because there was one period of time when everything, like literally, I felt like almost every shipment we sent out was delayed, lost packages. So it was, it cost us a lot, you know, from lost packages, and then also delays, trying to make customers, you know, happy, providing them discounts, things like that. And so that was a little bit out of our hands. We couldn't do that, but what it did allow me is kind of, you know, understand that we don't have control and try to reiterate to our consumers, you know, it is out of our hands, but we're trying to do what we can. And then also explore other options. You know, I think it's always good to continue exploring options. Even today, you know, I feel like we've kind of got a good system now, but, you know, I still want to explore other options to get things to customers faster, back, you know, all that kind of stuff, logistics of it.
Yeah, no, I get the sense that it's like very much it's not like a straight path to success. Like you have to do all of these like little adjustments and like testing. I'm curious then, like if you were to talk to someone maybe, or even yourself, like when you first started this business, what would you say is like one of the things that's helped you get through the challenges? Is there like a single piece of advice or something that you would say?
Yeah, I have a few pieces of advice. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
But one is this idea of done is better than perfect. Because I think, and especially coming from the client, corporate client side, I was used to like really striving for the best and like, I can be a perfectionist. And so there was a lot of times when I was like, really wanted to focus and like figure out something before I put it out in the world, and that's, I think, especially as an entrepreneur, just not the way to go. Like you need to get it out there and get some feedback for a number of reasons. But one, like, I could be focusing on this thing over here, trying to get it, perfect. And then when we get it out, customers don't care at all about this. And they, this is more interesting to them, but we've wasted all this time, spending on this. And so I think it's important. I've learned, and I try to make myself continue to do, is like try to get things out and then reiterate. And it's not necessarily always feels good to like put something well, I know this shouldn't be like this or whatever. There can be improvement, but I think that's more important, just to kind of get it out there, and then get the feedback and reiterate after that.
That's definitely something we've been trying to improve on, I think, since we started. I'm an engineer by trade, and also I think that's what they teach you in school, at least growing up, right? It's like there's a test, there's 10 questions, you need to answer all 10 questions, right? Where it's never really like that. It's like black and white. It's like, okay, it's the 80-20 rule, right? Like get 80% done, ship it out, and then reiterate afterwards.
Yeah, definitely.
Something that one of my favorite books and that we've been reading, that we've read, is called E-Myth Revisited, and it basically follows like a pie maker. And this girl basically learns how to make pies. And when she grows up, she's like, I want to make a pie business, right? And basically the story goes, she gets really stressed because all of a sudden there's stuff like payroll and inventory and like accounting. And she's like, what is all this? Like, I just want to make pies, And I think when people come into entrepreneurship, they're just like, oh, it's not just the product or service I need to make. It's like the business itself.
Yeah.
So how was that experience coming from like, a check on the 9 to 5 where you just do work and you come in, versus like, okay, not to build it, not just the product, but like the business around that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that was hard, especially coming from corporate, where you have, and especially company like Coca-Cola, where you have a lot of teams to help you, right? Like if I had a question about research, I could go to my research analyst, or I could go to my agency for creative, or I could go to the attorney at Coca-Cola. But when you're an entrepreneur, you're all those people. And so that was like, it's hard because it definitely takes a lot longer, especially if it's not your expertise. You're doing a lot, and sometimes you run into a lot of dead ends. But I think you just kind of have to keep going through it. I think that was kind of tough for me because I was like, oh my God, I have to do all this, and it's taking a long time. And then I think that to be honest, fed a little bit into like this imposter syndrome also. Like, can I do this? Should I, all that stuff, that a lot of us struggle with. And so it was kind of both. It's like, okay, what am I supposed to do? Can I do it? And then how? And that, I think it continues. Like even we've been in business for a while now, but every, now and then it comes, and you definitely have your, peaks and valleys. Anything. I remember someone telling me one time, nobody ever tells you there are days you might hate your company. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, that's true. I mean, there's definitely ups and downs, and
for sure.
Yeah.
No, I deeply resonate with that. I deeply resonate with that. Something that I'm curious about too is like, there are things that like when you talk about finding like the different hats, when we entered this business, at least for ourselves, we were like, I had an idea of like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. I'm going to love this aspect of the business. And then we got into doing it and I was like, wait, I actually hate this. This is not what I thought it was going to be. And there were other things that I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like I had no idea I could do this. So was there anything like that in your business that maybe was unexpected in terms of like, I'm actually pretty freaking good at this and I like doing this?
Well, I think, I don't know if it was like necessarily a revelation, but it did reinforce.
Yes.
So my background in the corporate world, I did a lot of marketing, for instance.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I think my work with LaBelle Bump and even Mina and Vine reinforced how much I do like the strategy of it, the marketing and business strategy. So like the early stage stuff.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed like that, like the insights, the target information, the competitive analysis, all that kind of stuff, bringing all that together. Is something, I really, really enjoyed. And then, there are definitely things like you said that I was like, I don't really like this, or, or like kind of struggle best to like do it or whatever. And, someone had offered the advice, like, you find those things, then you try to hire out and have someone do, obviously when you have the ability to do that, but have someone else do that, right? So that you can focus on the things that you do like. And I think that gets back to your point about like, working in the business or on the business, right?
Yes.
Yes. I think as the founder entrepreneur, it's important to work on the business. And a lot of times we tend to work in it, and we have to kind of, realize that and take the step back and someone else do that so we can work on it.
Yeah, definitely.
Very, very serious question. When are we going to see you on Shark Tank?
A lot of people have asked that, a lot of my friends, and I'm like, I don't know. I think it kind of scares me.
Oh, no, I think you're crushed. Your idea is brilliant, honestly. Wow. Makes so much sense. Actually, speaking of which, too, because Shark Tank has been a resource for us, even though we're not an e-commerce business. You had mentioned, like, when you first started, like, you were looking at a lot of different resources. What were kind of like your favorite places to get resources? What were your favorite resources to pull from in case, we have a listener that's maybe trying to start their own, e-commerce business?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it was just, I was trying to be a sponge, right? So, another piece of advice I'd say is just networking. I think that's so important. I mean, at all times, it's, but especially early on, there were so many things I learned just by like a casual conversation at an event or like a coffee. Like, the first subscription platform we launched on, I learned about that through someone I met, like randomly. I had no idea about this platform, and it was specifically for subscriptions. And so I learned about it, saved me a lot of money and time. So I think networking is really important. Just getting out there and talking to people. Like for me, it was a lot of leveraging the resources in Atlanta. So like meeting with entrepreneurs, everyone I met with, I was like, is there someone else you might have, might be good to talk to? Also going to like a lot of different events. We're lucky in Atlanta that there are a lot of like entrepreneurial events, some, targeted to women, some everyone. So that was nice for me. And then, the internet is great too, just researching. And again, like as I met people like in this specific business, like I had no retail, fashion, e-com was all new to me. I was really learning as I went. So like, for instance, sales reps I met, for the fashion lines, for the maternity designers, I would just kind of pick their brain and talk to them, and then they would give me other contacts and say, talk to this person, or, this might be good for your business. And so, yeah, I think just kind of like putting yourself out there and being a sponge, trying to learn as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense.
Without getting into numbers specifically, something I think we've talked to a lot of people and we struggle with ourselves is how much to invest in like growing the business, right? Whether it's like marketing or like reinvesting for R&D. I think especially in the beginning, people are like, oh, we don't have like enough money. We're not making revenue. Or even when you are making a lot of profits, like, how do you know how much to reinvest into the business? How did you navigate through that journey for yours?
Yeah, that's it's hard because I will be on, early on, I've always been very lean with the business. And early on, I was hesitant to like bring someone else on, not because I didn't want, someone to be part of the business or anything like that, but it was the financial aspect. I was like, can I, should I spend on this? Can I afford it? That kind of stuff. But I think it goes back to like where you are and like, going back to like, are you working in the business or on the business, right?
Yes.
And if you are in the business, you don't necessarily have time to like work and grow the business. So, that's kind of where it clicked with me. And I was like, okay, if I hire somebody, they can kind of manage this and frees up my time to like really try to focus on growing it. And so that's kind of been my, my frame of mind. I don't, whenever I think about this, it's like, okay, will it free up my time to be able to do this, to grow this? And then I kind of balance, am I getting the return back? Like, I hire an agency to do something, am I getting the return on that investment? And if so, then great. And if not, then let's make another change.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that's something that we are continually trying to figure out. So I agree with those words in terms of like, also the fact, like, I think something that we've come across is like shiny object syndrome, where we're like, oh, that looks like a really good idea. Maybe we should go do that instead.
Yeah.
So LaBelle Bump, clearly that's kind of like the main thing that you're doing, but was there any point in LaBelle Bump that you were kind of like, that looks good over there, maybe I should go try that out, that was maybe diverging off of your main business?
There were, there's always ideas, right? So like, for instance, keeping with the clothing rental, for instance, there's, I've always had the idea of like, okay, should we move into like, after our consumer, she's pregnant, she goes through nursing, we've got all her covered there. Should we start renting baby clothes, for instance, or baby care to kind of, have her as a customer longer? And so, the concept of rental is consistent with LaBelle Bump, but I started toying with it, and then I was like, okay, come back. Let's focus on this first. And customers have even asked, do you rent clothes after you're done with this phase? Because they've enjoyed the experience and the service and everything. So that was like another idea. Maybe you should, do that, or maybe partner with someone else, kind of have an affiliate program, so there are definitely those ideas, but I think, I've kind of said I want to focus on this until, and we are a niche and there's nobody else that's like focused on this. So I think we can like, still continue to scale and grow. And I think there's still room for us to like, gain more there.
Yeah.
I have a question about what people call work-life balance. So I actually heard this new thing where I actually, in my current phase of my life, I actually love the business, right? And so that's part of like life. And I think someone once said like, it should be more like work-life synergy, like basically find something that you love doing in your life, right? So where do you stand? Do you stand on the one should have a work-life balance, or one should have work that kind of seamlessly integrates with their life?
Well, I think the balance isn't ideal, but I think the latter, which you're talking about, the synergy, is like realistic. Because it's like you have to have both, or all of us have both, personal and the work, and it's like, and just inevitably there is going to be some crossover. Something comes up with work and that detracts from this, or vice versa. And so I don't think that's necessarily a balance. It's like, how do they all both work together?
Yeah.
At least I know Kayla and I, whether we're off the clock, we're still like talking constantly about our business.
Yeah.
Or we're about to go to bed. We're about to go to sleep. And we're like, oh, that thing. And, I personally still enjoy, those moments that are outside of working hours.
Yeah. Yeah, we're finding joy in it. We read this book a while back called Ikigai, and it's basically this idea that this book looks at some of the oldest living people, on the planet, all over the country, and something that they found across all of these different people, whether it be culture, environment, whatever, was that they had this principle of Ikigai, where it's like you do something that gives you purpose, that connects you to a community, that's, I think, like physically, it involves some sort of physicality, that kind of thing. So that was like kind of like, oh wow, that can be a thing too. Yeah. And I'm actually curious now too, like, do you see LaBelle Bump as being like an Ikigai for you, or is it just like a stepping stone maybe to that Ikigai?
No, I think it can. So our mission with LaBelle Bump, in terms of like purpose, as you were talking about, has always been to really help women look and feel confident and beautiful during their pregnancy, because I personally do feel pregnancy is like a wonderful time in a woman's life. But we don't really celebrate it. And we don't, for a number of reasons. I mean, you're necessarily not feeling like yourself. You might be sick, you're swollen, there's a lot of things going on. Your body is changing, so you don't feel like yourself. Like, I remember, being pregnant and wanting to, look nice, but I didn't want to spend money for the clothes. So I didn't have nice stuff, and I just didn't like, like all that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of why, a big reason why I started LaBelle Bump was really to help women to kind of feel and look that way. So that's kind of like our purpose. And we see that with customers responding to us in that way, and just say, thank you for making me feel beautiful, or thank you, I've never felt as good as I did, and so, it's a little bit, but it does help women feel confident during this, special, unique time in their life.
Of course.
One thing you just said, which made me appreciate how much of an experienced entrepreneur you are, is that you said our mission is this. Yes. And I feel like there are a lot of businesses that we come across where they don't even understand their mission, because I think you need mission and values to be able to execute the business.
Yes.
So that's really impressive that you have that in mind.
It is. It's a really beautiful mission too, because like, I have not been pregnant, but I have a friend that was pregnant recently, and I remember talking to her about that, where she was just like, man, all I do is just put on the same dress because this is the only thing that I feel comfortable in. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So she's not pregnant anymore, but I will probably send her this link regardless. You might appreciate, like, oh my gosh, it does exist.
Well, thank you. Thank you for spreading the word.
Yeah, for sure.
I've really enjoyed kind of the energy, but as we're wrapping up here, do you have any like kind of words of advice for young entrepreneurs like us as we progress through our journey of, the ideal of financial freedom sometime in the future?
Business ownership, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, a couple of things I talked about was like, the done, getting it done versus like waiting for perfection, and then the networking. I think also this idea, and this is kind of what started my venture, was that idea of stop talking and start doing.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and to be honest, I still do, I'm like, okay, I want to do this, with LaBelle Bump. Like, this is my plan. But then it's like, where's the action?
Yes.
Take action.
Yes.
Or, there's like that analysis paralysis. I'm like, okay, I could do this, like how to like do it. And so I think taking action is important. Again, just testing and getting it out there and reiterate,
for sure.
So at least I know for me, I can get sometimes in that analysis process, and I gotta like, okay, stop and like step back, and I'm like, okay, what can I do right now to like start moving? Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. I think that's my number one thing that I keep in mind in entrepreneurship is like, just do it, take action. So thank you for validating this. We will definitely leave a link to your website.
Absolutely.
Your social medias on our description. And for all of our audiences, let us know in the comments if you have any questions for Anita, and we'll get those questions to her. But
yeah, thank you so much again, Anita, for joining us. We really loved hearing all of the feedback that you had and hearing your different stories about your business. we made this podcast to share this kind of sentiment and the story with other people. So thank you again. For our listeners, we do upload weekly, so don't forget to hit that like, subscribe,
and hit that bell notification.
Yeah, to follow us on our journey. Again, thank you so much. We really appreciate you having you on.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Okay, bye.
Bye.